Rockies. Looking back at the career of Dexter Fowler, a Rockies player that was really good and had a really solid career. Also, the trade for Dexter Fowler. When you look back on it, more question marks about that. Plus, Purple Row held a poll of who should bat cleanup for the Rockies this season. We'll take a look at what their readers said here on today's Locked On Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the first day of February in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every single day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, then guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here on the Locked On Rockies podcast, is talk Colorado Rockies baseball. And folks, today's episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Today on the Locked On Rockies podcast, we're going to look back on the career of Dexter Fowler. We're going to look at the trade. We're going to look at his numbers. We're going to look at some of the impacts that Dexter Fowler had on the Rockies, and a career where you can kind of sit there and say Hall of really good, most likely, but that's seems like sometimes something that might undermine how good Dexter Fowler really was, I think, throughout his career, and especially his time with the Colorado Rockies. And we'll also see what Purple Row readers had to say about batting cleanup for the Rockies. We'll see what their poll results were, and I'll give my 2 cents on who should bat cleanup for the Colorado Rockies this season. Now, let's start with congratulating Dexter Fowler for an incredible career, a career where he reached, I would say one of the highest levels you can get, outside of being just shy of being, I think, superstar, but notable and impactful, and overall career where you can't really sit there and say that he was necessarily bad. Now, he might have had some down seasons. It might have, I know the injuries kind of caught up with Dexter Fowler towards the end of his career. But when you look at things overall for Dexter Fowler, you have to be impressed. This was a ball player that was very, very good, and was a ball player that, when you think about it and when you look at how it turned out, shouldn't have been traded from the Rockies, at least when you look at the amount of team control that they had and the players that they traded for. Our friends, again, at Purple Row, will go in the time machine and look back at breaking down that trade from 2017. 2017, pretty crazy to think about, because when the last time Dexter Fowler played baseball for the Colorado Rockies was a decade ago this year. He last played for the Colorado Rockies in 2013. He was traded to the Astros and played for the Astros in 2014. The Astros, that's right. It was I was surprised. I forgot about that as well. I remember the Cubs. I remember St. Louis, but I forgot that he had stints in Houston and Los Angeles, in Anaheim as well. But let's look at his time with the Rockies. He starts with the Rockies, and he gets his first look with the Rockies the year after Rocktober in 2008, gets 13 games there. So his first season at the major league level consistently for the Rockies was 2009. 2009, pretty good year for the Colorado Rockies when you look at the fact that they were back in the postseason, and where we're able to get into the wild card, and were able to make their way into the postseason and won 92 games that season. And that was the big offseason where Matt Holliday was traded. And you could probably point to the fact that the Rockies had Dexter Fowler, who in that season was playing very well, and of course was an outfielder. Dexter Fowler in his rookie year for the Rockies batted .266 with a .363 OBP, a .406 slugging, and an OPS OPS of 707. That includes 67 walks to only 27 strikeouts, 34 RBIs, 4 home runs, 10 triples, 29 doubles, and 115 singles in 518 plate appearances over 135 games. So that when you look at someone like Dexter Fowler, and when the Rockies were looking to move on from someone like Matt Holliday, Dexter Fowler is one of those players that the Rockies definitely considered when they were going to make that move. Why would you move on from Matt Holliday? Well, it's because you're, one, adding an outfielder back in Carlos Gonzalez, and you have Dexter Fowler, who can play left field. Played a lot of, obviously was the center fielder for the Rockies, and then they made the move and they put Cargo over there in left. And they had pieces in the outfield to move on from Matt Holliday. Which was Matt Holliday being worth the 3 players there, and 2 of them being really, really good. Houston Street and Greg Smith, I should say Carlos Gonzalez and Houston Street, and one of them, Greg Smith, I don't actually remember anything with the doing anything for the Rockies, but it was a big time moment for the Rockies and someone like Dexter Fowler. And then from there, Dexter Fowler would continue to go on and be consistent for the Rockies and play a lot of ball for them. He got a little banged up he played a little less in 13 and 14, but throughout his time with the Rockies, Dexter Fowler never batted under 250, slugged. He only had one season where his on-base percentage was under 350. His OPS was always in the high 700s. Again, 2010, a little bit low on there for Dexter Fowler. But thing with Dexter Fowler, 14 triples that year, and was able to, again, get 2 more RBIs, less walks, and again, the stolen bases were massive. Actually, I think I misread you that first line there. I think I read stolen bases as strikeouts. Yeah, in 2009, it was 27 stolen bases and 67 walks. My apologies. 116 strikeouts for Dexter Fowler in that season. I misread that there. So Dexter Fowler struck out, triple digit strikeouts throughout basically his entire career, the most of which not coming with the Rockies, though later on he was able to be consistent, but triple digits and triples, 4 straight seasons for the Rockies, and someone that I think was and I see what Joel says there. Something I think that you can kind of add to for the Rockies as a great personality, and someone that I think is a key ingredient to successful teams are players like Dexter Fowler. And I'll explain what I mean here in just a moment. But before I do that, got to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is your number one sports book here for the Super Bowl, or really any of your sports betting needs. They got you covered at FanDuel. So make sure you get the app, the FanDuel app, for everybody at your Super Bowl party, because America's number one sportsbook, FanDuel, has so many great bets for you. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with the no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from money lines to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. We looked yesterday on FanDuel. The odds for the Rockies to win the World Series are not great, but you know what? If you want to put a future bet on the Colorado Rockies at, I think yesterday was plus 20,000, well, guess what? You can go ahead and go do that. You can get all sorts of action at FanDuel. FanDuel is the place where you can play all your bets, and it's safe, it's secure, and super easy to use. That's what's always on my mind when I'm placing bets, is the safety and security when you're doing things online. And best of all, you can get paid for your winnings instantly. Join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, you can also stay up to date with everything going on in the world of MLB prospects with the Locked On MLB Prospects podcast. Lindsey Crosby's got you covered all the time. there. Joel DeGrace in the live chat says, I still laugh about when Dex lost his glove over the wall and hopped over to get it back. Dexter Fowler is the type of player that brings a positive, great energy to your team. He's crucial in the fact that he's someone that performed on the field. We talked about him being a contributor for the Rockies. Again, for your leadoff man, for what Dexter Fowler did with those numbers, awesome. Dexter Fowler, just to kind of put a bow on his career, finishes his career with a 19.4 WAR, baseball reference WAR, I should say, with over 1,300 hits, 127 home runs, 259 batting average, 817 runs, 517 RBIs, 149 stolen bases, an on-base percentage of 358, a slugging percentage of 417, an OPS of 775, and an OPS plus of 104. He's an all-star. He's a World Series winner. Wonderful, wonderful career for Dexter Fowler. And in addition to that, Dexter Fowler was someone who just brought an energy and brought an approach to the game that was awesome. He was someone that was able to go out there and be a dynamic threat for the Rockies. I'm watching a highlight here. Walk-off home run here for Dexter, or not walk-off, I should say, 3-run shot in the 5th, bat flip. He just had he brought personality to a team that it could always use it. You know what I mean? He was someone that I love when ball players are themselves. And it was always Dexter Fowler's unique style. It was the way Dexter Fowler was approached, and just his abilities. He was just fun to watch. He was speedy. He was able to cover all sorts of area in the outfield. And he could really put a thump into something. He was an electric and exciting leadoff hitter. To have someone that starts games off and he's an immediate and dynamic threat right off the top, that is something special. Dexter Fowler was an elite leadoff hitter. And again, something that's always fascinating and fun to watch, and something that I've talked about a lot on the show, and something I want to see more and more of from the Rockies, stealing bases. I mean, Dexter Fowler wasn't afraid to go out there and steal some bags for the Rockies. He was a double-digit base stealer. Well, it didn't steal as much as he did in 2009. Wasn't as successful then, but was still someone that would be willing to go in motion. And of course, triples. I mean, some people argue that the triple is the most exciting and entertaining and engaging play in baseball. So there was just such an entertainment value to having Dexter Fowler on your team. Plus, he has a big smile. He was always someone that was celebratory in the dugout with his teammates, and he was someone that I was always spoken very highly of. And there, if I recall correctly, during the Cubs. His stint with the Cubs, it was a big moment when he returned to the Cubs to help them on that World Series run and come back to the team to contribute. So there's so many great Dexter Fowler moments, and there's players that like Dexter Fowler that just make the game so much better and make teams like the Rockies so much better. And he was someone that was able to contribute and help Rockies teams as they continue to go up and down. But when the Rockies were good, and when the Rockies were competing during his time there, Dexter Fowler was a big part of that reason. And this is the Rockies traded Dexter Fowler for Jordan Lyles and for Brandon Barnes. And let's read here from Eric McKinley's piece from 2017 here on what the Astros got in the Fowler trade and what the Rockies got in the trade for Dexter Fowler. Fowler had 2 teams in control when he left the Astros acquired him. He played very well in the first year, posting 1.8 wins above replacement, according to Baseball Reference, despite losing time to injury. Fowler hit 276, 375, 399 in 116 games for the Astros. That mounted to 120 OPS plus, but the Astros were on the cusp of realizing their total rebuild, and it didn't make a lot of sense for them to keep Fowler, so they sent him to the Cubs, where he basically altogether, the Astros received 6 Baseball Reference WAR from the value of the Fowler trade. And then when Fowler went and played with the Cubs, He when in his 2 seasons away from the Rockies, Fowler hit 261, 358, 406, good for an 114 OPS plus and a 4.0 baseball reference WAR. Now, this is what the Rockies got for Dexter Fowler. And again, we're reading from Eric Garcia McKinley here on Purple Row. The Rockies gave up 2 years of team control of a good major leaguer for multiple years of control of 2 major leaguers who had slim chances of being good. Barnes was a 28-year-old outfielder with under a year of service time when the Rockies acquired him prior to the 2014 season. Both of those descriptors provide a good idea of the player the Rockies got. From the beginning of 2014 until his release in September 2016, Barnes provided some exciting moments with the Rockies, especially from the inside the park home run department. But ultimately, all he added to the Rockies was a bunch of tattoos. He hit 249, 295, 376 in 286 games, good for a 72 OPS plus. Barnes' R WAR, baseball reference WAR, in his 3 years with the team amounted to negative 0.3. Lyles came to the Rockies, a 23-year-old starting pitcher with 377 innings of major league experience under his belt. Lyles had a good first season with the Rockies, posting a 4.33 ERA to 98 ERA plus, but that was at his peaks, and he never captured the unrealistic potential ascribed to a player who debuted in the majors at 20-year-old, nor did he obtain the realistic potential of a reliable fifth starter. In all, Lyles threw 281 innings for the Rockies, including 37 starts. He posted a 5.22 ERA and a 4.49 FIP, an 88 ERA plus, and a .2 baseball reference WAR. The Rockies didn't get anything for Barnes, but they might trade Lyles in the coming week. If so, then the Fowler trade tree will continue. At the time of this article, the Rockies' total value in return for Fowler is negative 0.1 baseball reference WAR. Classic Rockies, classic trades. And speaking of Purple Row, they did an interesting poll, and I want to talk about it. It involves the cleanup hitter, and it's an interesting question you got there, 13. I will ask you, or I will answer that here, 13XAM13. Always thinking about relocation here, our friend here. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But before we do that, if you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. We're trying to eat better, and you're trying to keep on the momentum. You know what I mean? The first month of the year is over. Valentine's Day is around the corner, so you're really trying to keep up the momentum of your solid start to the new year. Well, get this. Built is healthy, and healthy is actually tasty. So that means nothing to doubt yourself when you're munching on a Built Bar. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it. I'm not a scientist, but here are the macros for their flavors. 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. You can check out the macros and a whole lot more for yourself at Built.com. But Built.com is not your exclusive home for ordering Built Bars or getting your hands on them. They're now at Costco and Sam's Club. Sam's Club and Walmart. If I keep getting my stores crossed, but Walmart and Sam's Club, place to go for your Built Bars. And they got the 4-bar box, they got the 13-bar box, tons of options and lots more at Built.com. Grab yourself a Built Bar today. All right, let's dive into the live chat here. Jeremy, he has made it into a live show. I love it. He's from baseball heaven, about 2 hours south of Dryersville. Ooh, very cool. And let's see. We'll answer this question here first from 13XAM. What's your opinion on the A's relocating to Las Vegas? Everything's possible. A professional baseball team will be in Vegas. I'm a firm believer that Vegas will be a beneficiary of expansion all the time. I don't think anything will get in the way of Vegas being able to bring teams there. If there's always expansion, if a team's going to move, Vegas is, I think, always going to be one of the best options because it kind of just makes sense for Vegas to have pro teams. As for the A's, I think they'll try to stay there, and we actually plan on doing a crossover with Locked On A's here pretty soon, so we'll talk about that. So I'm not necessarily sure if it will come true, but we'll just have to wait and see. You never know. Owners are gonna owner. Let's dive into another piece here from Purple Row, and they ran a poll where they were looking for the best candidate for the Rockies. But actually, so I misread this. Actually, okay, yeah, here we go. They held it for a back in the day one for cleanup hitters, and then they did another one here. And let's read from Joel Milholm here. With that in mind, Rockies fans can now start making predictions and holding debates on the details, like what the lineup should look like. A few weeks ago, that was in regards to the Rockies GM Bill Schmidt saying that the team's basically built, that the moves have been made. So the community, the Purple Row community has picked a couple of positions for players to play to fill in the batting order. So the Purple Row community said Jonathan Daza should be the best leadoff hitter, but Sean Bouchard and Zach Veen would also be good leadoff options. So that led them to ask who should bat cleanup. And here are the options. They did CJ Cron, Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon, Brendan Rodgers, and Ryan McMahon. So the poll is currently going on right now, and CJ Cron is currently leading for the Rockies here. And I think he's the obvious choice. I think that he is the one that you kind of should turn to in the 4 spot. I'd like Chris Bryant to stay at 3. I'd like him to maybe sit at that 3 and maybe even 5, just because of where he can be and his ability to get on base and hopefully be more of a force where Cron is really hoping that Chris Bryant plays, because then Cron can kind of just focus on being the power hitter and not being all of the offense. Again, one of the biggest things and biggest mistakes that we made was telling the team and saying, or kind of relying so much on CJ Cron being the big power bat, the big power option for the Colorado Rockies. And he can. I mean, we know he can do well, but we also know how streaky CJ Cron can be. He is a valuable player. He is a good option for the Rockies, but he's also someone that we've seen isn't as consistent as we like. Hopefully going to come back healthy, because something was up after that injury in the second half of the season. Those splits are a little bit worrisome, but when you really think about it, he kind of makes the most sense. I'd also think that Charlie Blackmon will fit there well when he plays as a DH. I really don't think putting Charlie Blackmon high up in the batting order is as in the leadoff is the right type of move, is the thing that the Rockies need to do. I think Jonathan Daza is exactly right for the top of your order. I think Brendan Rodgers too is really, really good. And then you can kind of let Rymack fall back a little bit further and hopefully take a little bit of the pressure off of him being the cleanup guy, or someone in that really, really got to have you generate some offense right there. I don't necessarily think the Rockies have like super strong cleanup options. I don't necessarily think any of these players are really going to be beneficial. And it would be really great if the rookies can come up and do something big for the Rockies. And Michael Tolley and Eleris Montero also on the poll here at Purple Row. You can still go and vote right now and participate if you'd like, purplerow.com. They would be the really nice surprise candidates, because if you have Montero who's able to fill your cleanup spot, Cron drops to 5 and Bryant is in 3, that just kind of is, that could add some interesting dynamics and wrinkles into what your team would be and your lineup, because you need to move your contact around a little bit, especially when you don't have Jose Iglesias. So you kind of need someone, I think, like a Ryan McMahon or maybe your Sean Bouchards or something like that in the bottom half of your order to kind of the bottom half just can't be a total dead zone. So the Rockies are really going to need to be careful of where they're piecing things, because it can get too top heavy too fast. And I think that was one of the big issues we saw with the Rockies when they put just basically it was when in the playoff years, the back-to-back playoff years, it was, man, 1 through 5 is great. And then 6 through 9 is just woof. So I really think that there is a benefit into putting a better bat later in the lineup as well. But you got to make sure you're capitalizing on things. So as it stands right here, right now, think CJ Cron. I'm gonna agree with people. CJ Cron is the better option for cleanup, just because he can hopefully he can focus on just being the power bat and generating offense, because he might strike out and such, but we're not going to rely on him putting the ball necessarily in play for like doubles and such. We can, if he puts the ball in play with runners in scoring position, which you're hoping that Jonathan Daza and Brendan Rodgers can continue to get on base, and Chris Bryant helps there too with that first three. CJ Cron can at least hit the ball far enough, hopefully out of the yard like he can, but hit the ball far enough or be impactful enough to drive in some runs as the cleanup hitter. And then you can kind of hit refresh a little bit with your Ryan McMahon, your Randall Grichuk, your Tolia, and all sorts of your other players that you're going to fit in there as well. And Ezequiel Tovar, what's he going to be like? I mean, what impact is he going to have? Because if Ezequiel Tovar becomes a dynamic threat up there with Jonathan Daza, what does that mean? And how much further do you just shift people down instead of, hey, Tovar, let's have you focus on being a sixth guy who can kind of refresh our lineup, and say we go down in 2 straight innings, we can come to, or we got an opportunity here with 2 outs and 2 runners on in the 3rd inning or something, or late 2nd inning. Tovar might be a good option there. He's, we really don't know what he's going to bring to the team, so I'm not ready to immediately throw him up there. I mean, there's a lot of hype around Tovar, at least from people on the major level, but until we see a lot more of it, we can't just immediately jump into thinking Tovar is going to change the whole game. But I really do think that Cron's the best option for now. But a really great scenario is Eleris Montero develops that power and is the power bat that he considers himself to be, and that helps the Rockies big time. And he can fill that 4 spot. Cron can add a little bit more thump in there, a little more power depth into the lineup there. When you should be, if Montero turns into a home run threat, you should be fairly confident in generating some runs if your order goes Bryant, Montero, Cron. Out of those 3 with runners in scoring, and you got runners in scoring position, those 3 should be your ones that are generating the offense and bringing runners in. We'll have to see from Montero. We have to see even where Montero is going to play consistently and such next year. But those would be my 2 options as well: CJ Cron and Eleris Montero. Quick answer here. If the Rockies sell the team, who would buy them? Just curious. It would be some rich people. Would not just be a Colorado native. Someone might be in the area, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I mean, look who bought the Broncos. It was Walmart. So I bet you if the Rockies were up for sale, it would be another big major thing. And Dick Monfort, I'm sure, would try to get as much money as possible. Folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked on Rockies. What a great live chat today. Joel DeGrace, 13XAM13, Jeremy McDude. I saw my guy Eric Harper in here. He says Eleris is going to be a big bat for us this year. Here's hoping. Today on Locked on Rockies podcast, we talked about Dexter Fowler. We talked about batting cleanup. And folks, you can find Locked on Rockies wherever you find podcasts, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. You can find us on YouTube. Actually, YouTube is where you can hear the podcast first, because we record our episodes live. The episodes are posted to YouTube first, and so if you subscribe to Locked on Rockies on YouTube, not only do you hear the show first, you can be part of the show, be part of the live chat, and ask your questions and have them answered live here on the Locked on Rockies podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked on Rockies your first listen of the day. Go make Locked on MLB Prospects or the Locked on Broncos, Locked on Avalanche, or Locked on Nuggets podcast your second listen of the day. And until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked on Rockies podcast.